was Joyce part of Dr. Brenner's experiment when she was pregnant with Will? So this is a theory that I have on Stranger Things and that I think we're going to learn about in season 5. So let me explain. So we know that Dr. Brenner wanted to make more people like Henry Creel, more people with superpowers. And he tried to recreate what happened to Henry, and that's when he did his initial experiment and project on different volunteers to try and make them have superpowers. It didn't work. However, Terry Ives became pregnant during the experiment and then had 11 who had superpowers. Dr. Brenner did a second project, an experiment, recreating this. Now he knew what to do, and he recruited only pregnant women to try and recreate what happened to Terry Ives. It's safe to assume that this probably was around the time that Joyce was pregnant. 11 is a similar age to Will's. I think it's a safe assumption to make that when Dr. Brenner was running this experiment and recruiting pregnant women, that Joyce probably was pregnant with Will. We know from the previous experiment Dr. Brenner did that he was asking for volunteers and offering money for it. So he likely did this for the second experiment too, as an incentive to get people into the experiment. He would have probably put out flyers, leaflets, ads asking for pregnant women to come to Hawkins' lab and to be part of this study in exchange for money. Now we know Lonnie, Jonathan and Will's dad, Lonnie, the little we do see of him basically shows us how he is always on the lookout for money. He comes home because his son is missing and then presumed dead, and they think that they found Will and he's died. And then the thing that Lonnie's thinking about is, how can I get money? How can I get compensation? He's found a flyer saying ways you can get compensation, and that is what he's there for. So if there were ads going round all those years ago saying, we're looking for pregnant women to come to Hawkins' lab and we'll give you a load of money, Lonnie, being someone who seems to look out for these sorts of ads, would have probably seen it, had a pregnant wife at the time, and lived very close to the lab. I am convinced he would have definitely then tried to get Joyce involved. He'd have been like, Joyce, look, you're pregnant. The lab want pregnant women to go and be part of this study and you'll earn a load of money. The lab's literally down the road. Why not? Joyce and Lonnie were together at that time, so she'd have probably listened to him and he'd have probably been able to sort of convince her and talk around to it. And so she'd have probably gone for it. I could imagine her being quite reserved and a bit worried about it, but she might have felt like she'd not had much option. She has one son already, has another son on the way, and she probably thought, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. With Lonnie convincing her, she would have. And so I think Joyce was part of that project, was part of that study, and this is part of my other theory, that I think Will has powers. I think Will, similarly to 11, has powers. I just think they're different powers. So whereas Elle has like telekinesis powers and can like move things with her mind, I think Will's are different. I think he has creation powers. I think he can create things with his mind. I've done a whole different video on that theory, but just to summarise it, I actually think it was Will who created the Upside Down with these creation powers. I think he got these powers from the study, that Joyce was part of the study when she was pregnant with Will, and that meant Will was born with powers. So you might be wondering, well, why doesn't Will live at the lab? How does Joyce still live with him? Why wasn't Will taken away from Joyce? Why doesn't Will have a number tattooed on him? I think this is because the lab thought the experiment failed on Will. I think they did the tests to see if he had powers, and because Will's powers are different, because they present differently, they're these creation powers, they didn't notice it. They were testing for the movement powers, for the powers that the other kids were showing and that they were expecting. And so they thought Will didn't have any powers because he wasn't creating anything. I think all the things he creates have basically gone to Dimension X, or to the Upside Down. He hasn't necessarily unlocked the full capacity of his powers. And so they thought he didn't have powers. They didn't present the same as the other children's powers did. So they thought he didn't have powers. They thought the experiment had failed on him. And so they let Joyce keep him. They didn't keep him at the lab, but they didn't try and cover anything up. They let Joyce and Will stay alive and everything because they wanted to keep a close eye on it. They wanted to sort of monitor them to see if Will eventually did present with powers. We see 8, Callie, 11's sister. From what we saw in season 2, it appeared that Callie was taken at an older. So she wasn't taken as a baby, she was taken older. So with her, it might have been that her powers didn't show till later. And so that's why she wasn't taken straight away. So it's safe to assume, therefore, that they would have let Will sort of carry on, let them go home and just monitor the situation. And if Will had eventually presented with powers, then they would have taken him and kept him at the lab. But he never did. And so they didn't need to keep him at the lab. By the time he did, he was in the Upside Down, and then Dr. Brenner was gone. It was a new person running the lab, and they were happy to run things a different way then, and they weren't keeping the children in the lab. So Will was able to again stay at home, even after presenting with powers by creating the Upside Down. And they probably weren't even 100% certain if it was him or not that created it. And so that would explain why Will doesn't live at the lab and why he doesn't have a number. Joyce probably wouldn't have mentioned it to anyone because she was probably felt quite ashamed that she was was part of this study when she was pregnant. She's not probably going to be telling everyone about it. Also, the lab probably told her not to tell anyone and probably threatened her and her family if she did tell anyone. So that would explain why Joyce hadn't mentioned this to anyone yet. So that is one of my Stranger Things season 5 theories and something I think we're going to learn about in the final season. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you agree or disagree with this theory, and let me know what theories you have for season 5. And we only have a couple of days now to wait until the first 4 episodes, so let's see what we're going to find out. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd be so grateful if you smash a big thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.